The sun was beginning to set over Los Angeles, turning the sky orange as LUKA Dončić drove his truck through the city's busy streets. It was his first day off after a grueling stretch of games with the Los Angeles Lakers, and he was taking the time to relax. With the windows rolled down, a light breeze blew through the car as he watched pedestrians come and go on the sidewalks. Los Angeles had always had a frenetic pace, but there was something special about that day, something that caught his attention in an unexpected way. As he stopped at a red light, his eyes were drawn to a figure leaning against a lamppost on the sidewalk. There was something familiar about the man. His clothes were worn, his gaze was lost, his shoulders slumped in silent defeat. LUKA frowned. There was something unsettling about the scene. It was only after a few seconds of closer observation that he realized. It was Jure Novak. The name echoed in his mind like thunder. He hadn't seen that face in years, but he could never forget it. Jure was one of the great talents of Slovenian basketball, a childhood friend, a guy with whom he shared the court, dreams, and victories. The last time they had spoken, Jure was on his own journey to professional basketball. So what was he doing there, alone, with such a desolate expression? Without thinking twice, LUKA pulled over to the street, parked and got out of the car. The heart was beating fast. He didn't know what he would find, but he couldn't just ignore it. He approached cautiously. Swear. It took the man a moment to react. When he finally raised his head and his eyes met LUKA's, he froze. There was a shock in his gaze, but most of all, there was shame. LUKA didn't say anything for a few seconds. He just watched. What happened to his friend? Where was the boy who dreamed so big? And most of all, what could LUKA do for him now? The silence between the two lasted longer than LUKA expected. Jure looked away, as if trying to hide inside his own shame. He fidgeted with his hands, a nervous gesture, but said nothing. LUKA realized he needed to break that barrier. "I can't believe I see you here, man," he said, forcing a friendly smile. "Long time no see, huh?" Jure let out a short, humorless laugh and ran a hand over his face. Too much time. His voice was different, hoarser, filled with tiredness. LUKA felt a tightness in his chest. This was not the same person he had met years ago. "What happened, Jure?" he asked bluntly. For a moment it seemed like Jure wouldn't answer. He stared at the ground, kicking an imaginary stone. When he finally raised his head, his eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "A lot has happened, LUKA. A lot of things I never imagined would happen to me." LUKA remained silent, giving him space to speak. "Do you remember how promising it all was? We were the boys from Slovenia who had a dream. You did it. But he hesitated, took a deep breath, and continued. "Right after you went to the NBA, I went to Europe to try my luck. I got a good contract. I was playing well. But then," he closed his eyes for a second. "Then I got hurt." LUKA felt a chill run down his spine. He knew what an injury could do to a player's career. "The team released me. I had no insurance, no support. The treatment was expensive, and I was never the same after that. I spent years trying to get back into basketball, but no one wanted to risk a contract with me. With no money, no prospects, I was sinking, and now I'm here." LUKA looked at his friend and realized that his pain wasn't just physical, it was emotional. "Don't you have any family nearby? Someone who can help you?" Jure shook his head. "I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I'd rather be on my own." LUKA was silent for a few seconds. He knew Jure had always been proud, but this wasn't a matter of pride. It was survival. He took a deep breath. He already knew what he needed to do. "Get in the car. Let's sort this out." Jure's eyes widened. "What?" "I said get in the car. You don't have to go through this alone." Jure hesitated. LUKA could tell. He wanted to refuse, but at the same time the offer seemed too good to refuse. After a long moment of indecision, he finally took a step forward. LUKA opened the passenger door. Jure entered, and LUKA knew that this was the first step towards changing his friend's life. The car's engine roared softly as LUKA accelerated, pulling away from the busy street and onto a quieter avenue. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy but not uncomfortable. Jure stared out the window, his eyes fixed on the city passing by, as if trying to process everything that was happening. LUKA kept his hands steady on the steering wheel, taking his time. He knew his friend needed time to process this. Are you hungry? He asked, breaking the silence. Jura hesitated for a moment before answering. A little. Luka smirked. Great, I know a good place. He drove to a low-key restaurant, one of his favorites in Los Angeles. It was a cozy place, away from the spotlight, where he could relax without being surrounded by cameras and curious onlookers. When they entered, Luka noticed that Jura seemed out of place. He was looking around, as if he were invading a space where he didn't belong. Luka understood what he felt. Someone who had spent so much time fighting alone rarely knew how to accept help. They sat down, and Luka ordered. So, he said, crossing his arms on the table, what's your plan now? Jure let out a short, humorless laugh. Plan? Do you think I still make plans? Luka didn't look away. And why not? Jure sighed, rubbing his face with his hands. Luka, I've spent the last few years trying to survive. I've slept in shelters, I've done temporary work, I've lived off of favors. When you're at that level, there's no room for dreams or plans. You only think about the next day. Luka listened to everything in silence. He knew that Jure was telling the truth, but he also knew that this didn't have to be his reality forever. What if I told you that you can start over? Jure laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. What? I'm not a player anymore. My body can't handle it anymore. But basketball isn't just about being on the court, Luka replied. The sport has many doors, and I can open some for you. Jure stared at him, skeptical. Do you really think someone like me has a place in this world again? Luka smiled. I don't think so, I'm sure. The waiter brought the dishes, and for a while, conversation ceased as they ate. Jure devoured the food with silent voracity, like someone who hadn't had a decent meal in days. Luka waited until he finished before continuing. I can get you a job at a sports academy, training young people, passing on to them everything you... No, Jure blinked in surprise. Would you do that for me? Luka laughed. Dude, I just pulled you off the street. What do you think? Jure was speechless. For a moment, his eyes shone with something Luka hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. That was just the beginning, but Luka knew it was a good start. The next morning, Luka drove to one of the most reputable training centers in Los Angeles. It was a state-of-the-art gym where young talent trained under the supervision of experienced coaches. He had already made a few phone calls the night before, ensuring that his friend had a chance to start over. Jure, however, looked uneasy. Are you sure about this, Luka? He asked, looking out the car window. Sure, you've spent your whole life breathing basketball, Luka replied, without taking his eyes off the road. You may not be on the court as a player, but you can still teach. Inspire, Jure sighed, crossing his arms. I don't know if I'm ready. Luka braked smoothly as he reached the gym parking lot and looked at his friend. The truth, Jure. No one is ever 100% ready for anything, but if you don't take that first step, you'll never know what you're capable of. Jure swallowed hard. Luka realized he wanted to believe it, but fear still held him back. When they got out of the car, they were greeted by Trevor Mills, one of the directors of the sports center, a former player-turned-coach who had a keen eye for talent. Luka, always good to see you, Trevor greeted, shaking his hand. Likewise, man, Luka replied, before turning to Jure. This is Jure Novak, a great player from Slovenia. He has plenty of experience working with young people. Trevor studied Jure for a moment, as if trying to see beyond the simple clothes and tired expression. Have you trained young people before? He asked. Jure took a deep breath. Not officially, but I spent years playing, learning the game. I know how to teach. I know how to correct mistakes. I just need a chance. Trevor nodded, crossing his arms. Everyone starts somewhere. Here's what we're doing. Today we have a training session with 14 to 16-year-old boys. Why don't you get on the court and show us what you're capable of? Jure's eyes widened. Now? Trevor smiled. Now. Luka patted his friend on the shoulder. Go on, man. You can do it. Jure hesitated for a second, then nodded. He followed Trevor into the academy, and Luka watched, inwardly hoping he would find a new purpose here. From the stands, Luka watched as Jure took the ball and entered the court. The young people watched him curiously, not knowing exactly who he was. Trevor threw the ball to him. Let's see what you've got, Novak. Jure took a deep breath, held the ball steady, and began to move. In the first few seconds, LUKA realized something incredible. The posture, the control of the ball, the calculated movements, the talent was still there. The younger players began to pay attention. Some exchanged surprised glances. Jure demonstrated, dribbling, passing, and shooting like someone who still belonged in that world. LUKA smiled. The game had never left Jure. He just needed to remember that. The silence on court lasted only a few seconds before the young men began to react. At first, they looked at Jure with skepticism, unsure of who he was. But as he began to demonstrate his control of the ball, the doubtful looks were replaced by expressions of respect and curiosity. LUKA, watching from the stands, felt genuine pride. This was the Jure he knew, the player who, years ago, made precise passes, read the game like few others, and had a natural talent for teaching. Trevor, noticing the young men's attention, stepped forward and crossed his arms. So guys, this is Jure Novak, former professional player, one of Slovenia's great talents. Today, he's going to show you a few things. Jure swallowed, still feeling a little out of place, but LUKA saw him take a deep breath and step forward. Right. What I see most in young players is that they try to run before they learn to walk. Basketball is not just about strength and speed. It's about control, intelligence, vision. If you don't know how to read the game, you'll always lose. He picked up the ball and began to dribble slowly. Every great player has to know how to control the ball without looking at it. This allows you to see the court and make split-second decisions. The boys looked at each other, interested. LUKA saw when Jure smiled, starting to get into the rhythm. Let's do a test. I want each of you to try, dribbling with your eyes closed for at least 5 seconds. The young men began to practice, stumbling a little at first, but Jure walked among them, correcting their postures, adjusting the positioning of their hands, encouraging them. Gradually, the tension on his face was replaced by something different, a gleam in his eyes. LUKA smiled. There was his friend again, not as a player, but as a teacher, a conversation that changed everything. When practice ended, the young players approached Jure, asking questions, wanting to know more about his story. They saw him as an authority figure, someone who had experience and could teach them. Trevor, pleased with what he saw, placed his hand on Jure's shoulder. You have a talent for this, Novak. If you want, you can start working here. Jure blinked in surprise. Are you serious? Totally. We'll start with part-time and, if it works out, we'll expand. How about that? For a moment, LUKA thought Jure was going to collapse. The weight of years of failure, uncertainty, and struggle seemed to be lifting off his shoulders. He wasn't used to good news. I would love to, Jure replied, his voice breaking. LUKA smiled. Life had given him a second chance. Later, when they left the academy, Jure stopped next to the car and looked at LUKA. I don't know how to thank you, man. LUKA crossed his arms, leaning against the side of the truck. No need to thank me. You deserve it. Jure shook his head, smiling. No, LUKA, you could have passed me on that street and kept going, but you didn't. You stopped. You cared. LUKA was silent for a moment. Then he lightly punched his friend on the shoulder. Basketball is a family, Jure. We take care of our own. The two of them stood there for a moment, letting the words sink in. Finally, Jure took a deep breath. So, what's next? LUKA smiled. Now you start over. And for the first time in a long time, Jure believed it was possible. And so ends this incredible story of overcoming friendship and second chances. LUKA Dončić proved that true success is not just about titles or fame, but about the impact we leave on the lives of the people around us. If you like this story and want more content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This helps us a lot to continue bringing inspiring stories like this. And now tell me, what did you think of this ending? Do you believe that small gestures can change an entire life? Leave your comment below. We want to know your opinion. See you in the next video.